Hello, I'm Conor Meade. We're here at the Canadian Science Policy Conference with Dr. Stephen Woods and Jennifer Flanagan. Stephen Woods is the site lead and director and senior engineering director at Google's primary office in Kitchener-Waterloo, and Jennifer Flanagan is the CEO, president, and founder of Actua. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Nice
Thank
to be
you.
here. Thank you.
So why don't we start, Jennifer, why don't you tell us a bit about Actua and the work that you're involved in?
Great, thank you. So Actua is a national charitable organization. We engage youth across the country in transformational experiences in science, technology, engineering, and math. So we get kids excited about science and technology. We've been at it for the last 20 years. We work with university and college-based organizations who are on the ground doing the delivery of programs. That takes the form of workshops in schools, after-school programs, weekend programs, and a whole slew of summer-based experiences. On an annual basis, Actua is engaging 250,000 youth in about 500 communities across the country. So big geographic reach, really working to get kids first excited about science and technology, but then to quickly build skills and to show them the pathways and opportunities that exist in those fields.
Excellent. That sounds really interesting. What would you say are some of the major successes that you've had with Actua so far, and what would you say are some of your goals moving forward in terms of things that you'd like to accomplish within the next, say, 10 or 20 years?
Right. So one of the things that Actua has focused on from the beginning, but placed a significant amount of focus on over the last decade, has been the engagement of underrepresented audiences. So really looking at who is missing in science and technology, and why, and how do we make a change on that. So we all know that there's a vast underrepresentation of women, for example, in STEM fields, certainly of Indigenous people, youth who are facing other kinds of socioeconomic challenges. So Actua is starting on the ground. It's one of our big areas of focus moving forward, but engaging early with girls, with Indigenous youth and Indigenous communities across the country, really making sure that all youth have the opportunity to be engaged and inspired by science.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So what do you think are some of the major obstacles right now to those marginalized communities that prevent them from developing that digital literacy?
I think a big part of it is exposure. It's exposure for all youth, and that's really at the core what Actua works to do, is provide that very first exposure to youth to hands-on science and technology. So what does that look like when it's connected to what's important in their lives and when it's hands-on and interactive? So across the boards for all youth, we're providing that first exposure. That's particularly important when we look at audiences that are underserved and underrepresented, so that don't have the kind of opportunities for educational enrichment that other communities might have. And certainly there's a significant lack of role modeling. So if you have a workforce in STEM that looks a certain way, that gets reflected in the kind of people that actually consider pursuing those careers in the future. Mm-hmm. So if you can't see it, you can't be it, we like to say, and so that means we're putting role models in front of kids that actually look like the kids we're trying to attract. So engaging women role models, engaging Indigenous scientists to actually come out and talk to these youth so they can start to imagine themselves in those fields in the future.
Right, to break that chicken and egg cycle of you need the role models in tech. Unless you have them, then no.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So moving over to Stephen. So Stephen, why don't you start off by telling us a bit about your career, some of the companies you've been involved in, and where you're at right now.
My career has taken a lot of strange turns over the years, but primarily I have a long background in computer science. I have a doctorate in artificial intelligence from the University of Waterloo, and I've been working in startups and startup-related companies for, I guess, what is nearly 20 years now, including starting several of my own in California, and then more recently, and by more recently I mean for over the last 7 years or so, growing Google's engineering and product development efforts in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So what are some of the interesting things going on at Google Canada in Kitchener-Waterloo right now?
Yeah, we have a lot of really interesting things going on. Currently we're really focused on a series of products involving machine learning and applications to advertising. Specifically trying to drive more value for advertisers and for content publishers. So we're doing a lot of things in that and have done that for a number of years. We do a lot of work in mobile applications for consumers. So we're responsible for things like mobile Gmail at Google, things like that. So that's quite exciting. We always have something new on the go. It's Google after all. So what the next 7 years will hold is a little bit in the air at the moment, but we're really excited. We're just moving into expanded facilities right now. We're helping the tech community expand in Kitchener-Waterloo and working closely in Toronto as well. So we're trying to be much more involved with the startup community. And so there's a lot going on.
Okay. So thank you. So in keeping with the theme of digital literacy and encouraging youth participation in the tech sector, I wonder if you could tell us about how you got started and your interest in software and technology and how you jumped into the tech world.
Right. How I got started. I guess around the age of around 14, I was exposed to a very early computer science class on an Apple computer in school. And I got interested at that time, and I expressed that interest to my parents, and that resulted in me receiving a VIC-20 computer in like around 1985 or something like that. And I started fiddling around with it. I do lots. I like to fiddle around with things, and I also like to do sports. I ended up writing like a statistics program for my high school basketball team, and I had a lot of fun. There wasn't a lot of documentation available for these kind of things, so I had to do a little research to find out how to make things happen. This actually is a really interesting aspect, I think, of how people learn. I had to do a lot of fiddling to make things happen, and it had a lot of fun. I eventually started building computer games, and then carried that on into university and beyond.
That experience is so reflective of the kind of both the challenge and the opportunity that exists in building digital literacy skills. So that story is so common, right? The people that are involved in computer science now, but people also who have strong digital literacy skills are people who had the opportunity to fiddle around, to play, that someone put the technology in front of them and allowed them to experiment with it. So it wasn't just about kind of consuming technology, right? I mean, this was before the days of the internet.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, in Steve's case, it was the opportunity to actually create new technology. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do with the initiative that Actua and Google have embarked on together called Codemakers, which aims to engage 100,000 youth in Canada in building digital literacy skills over the next 3 years. And really, it's about that experience. So it's about giving kids the opportunity to certainly learn skills, computer science skills, but then very quickly putting them into activities and environments where they can build that technology to suit their needs. So in Steve's case, it was something for his school sports team. For kids have such varied interest, and the more we can connect the digital skills and the digital world to what's important to them, the more they're going to see the additional applications that it has. So Codemakers really is about giving kids the experience that Steve created on his own, and doing that in ways that also engage those groups that we talked about before. So a specific focus of Codemakers really is on who's missing and who doesn't have the opportunity to have access to technology. So we're with Google developing really innovative hands-on computer science content that then goes into Actua's Girls program, our Indigenous youth program, and our programming across the North, for example. So that really is at the heart the experience that we're trying to replicate.
Absolutely.
So that all sounds really exciting. So a question for both of you. Regarding digital literacy and all this great work that both your organizations are doing, to what extent is it necessary to get kids into classrooms relative to just creating scalable technology that can enable digital literacy on a mass scale?
How important is it to get this into schools?
To get into classrooms, like to get kids into a location. Basically, is the future of digital literacy schools and classrooms, or is it decentralized? Is it something that could be on your mobile device?
I'll have a short, then you can add proper context. So my opinion about this is that it's everywhere, ultimately, that our lives are affected by it everywhere in whatever context. So whether you're learning about physics or learning about English potentially, or or fiddling around at home with a toy. Can it be done on iPads? Certainly. There's wonderful programs we've talked before about Lightbot and some of the amazing things you can do playing games and programming games to do amazing things. But at the end of the day, the more access, the more people have to it in the most different ways, the better, so that we can reach more people in more children and more different types of children in different contexts.
So Codemakers will work inside of school and outside of school. So knowing that kids spend a chunk of their time inside of school, but there's this huge chunk of time they're outside of school that they could be engaged in these experiences. So Codemakers is doing work to bring more digital content into classrooms, but then also through after-school programs and weekend programs and in the summer, really opportunities to engage kids further in skill building. So it's across the board.
Okay, excellent. So a question for Jennifer, although Steve, feel free to weigh in. What do you think are some of the most important actions that policymakers can take to increase digital literacy, and specifically digital literacy within marginalized communities?
Great. So there's policy both at the provincial and federal level. So provincially, obviously, education is held provincially. So what we'd like to see is more of a formal focus on digital literacy curriculum, starting in elementary school. So most of that is held right now at the high school level. We'd like to see that be included right from kindergarten. So that's provincially. Federally, we would like to see inclusion of digital skill building among youth included in the Digital Canada 150 strategy. It's a very comprehensive strategy right now, but it is missing that key piece about engaging youth in skill building. So has a dual policy implications.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a very strong opinion about this. I think that we are not doing enough in our education system to connect students with an understanding of how the world around them is operating.
Absolutely.
And how they can change that and affect it and make other things happen. And the reality is it sounds very mysterious and somewhat far away from accessibility, but it isn't. And we talked about just getting access to things like Maker Labs and the ability to fiddle with things and make things happen. And it's not a mathematical problem per se. Certainly there's math involved. It's not a mechanical problem. There's math, there's mechanics involved in some of these things. It's about having the right tools, the right access, and the right mentoring to just try some things. And if you look around the devices we have here, everything that we're looking at, every piece of furniture almost has some kind of a computer in it. And that means we need to understand how does one make a computer do things that are interesting. And those aren't computer science issues per se. They're about changing the world. And so I think we need to keep connecting people and their interests to how they can make applications to the real world, and that requires these days understanding something about science, technology, engineering, and math.
Excellent. Well, so before we wrap up, I just want to ask you both, for those who are viewing, where can we go to learn more about your organizations and more about the work that you're doing on digital literacy?
So our website, actua.ca, actua.ca.
Excellent.
Yes, and ours is google.com. You may have heard of us. We have a lot of information there about computer science education, and some of the programs we're involved in.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.